Hello Car-Revs-Daily fans, Detroit Bureau Chief Carl Malik here, and welcome to part 2 of our 2-part series for episode 4 of our Candid Thoughts and First Impressions. And today we are spending some more time with our latest arrival, the 2020 Hyundai Ioniq Hybrid. Now this particular Ioniq is a limited grade Ioniq, and that means you do get goodies such as leather seats that can be heated, a leather wrapped steering wheel, as well as other luxury oriented goodies that make it stand out from lesser Ioniqs. This particular Ioniq is not the plug-in nor the electric, but the traditional hybrid does compete with entries such as the Toyota Prius as well as the Honda Insight. Now before we get into what it's like to drive our tester around town here, we might as well give you a small update in regards to an item that we said in our video yesterday. In our video yesterday, we mentioned that Hyundai and Korean K-pop band BTS recently teamed up to make the new theme song for the Ioniq sub-brand. No, that's not a joke. The new Ioniq sub-brand is actually getting a theme song. And it's very cool of Hyundai to tap into pop culture and take a young rising act like BTS and work with them on a song. The song's title is called I'm On It, or the Ioniq song as some other people have called it. And in our last video, we mentioned that we were going to wait until we heard from our resident K-pop worshiper, Emily, and her thoughts on the song. She took a few listens to it. She might have listened to it 5, 10, a lot of times. And she actually liked the song. She said that it's very relaxing and it does a good job of letting you know what the Ioniq brand is about. The Ioniq brand is not about being stodgy or snooty or uppity about getting fuel economy. It's about having these customers feel encouraged to relax, that they can turn on this song in their Ioniq while on a Sunday drive or even just through town. So Emily really likes the song, and again, Hyundai, good job on working with BTS. But now that we got that out of the way, what's it like to drive the Ioniq Hybrid around town? We're doing a little in-city loop right now, and we'll tell you that the Ioniq is not going to be the most dynamic thing on the planet. The Ioniq is designed to sip fuel first and foremost, and as a result, you're not going to find the most powerful engine in the world in here. Our hybrid is powered by a combination unit. You get a 1.6 liter 4-cylinder engine that makes about a little over 100 horsepower, and that's hooked up to a 43 horsepower electric motor. So the combined rating of the two is right around 136 horsepower, and that means that the Ioniq is going to do 0 to 60 in just over 8 seconds. When we were reading Hyundai's figures for that, they were quoting right around 8.5 seconds. So this is not going to be a track star, but it is really good at sipping fuel. We have taken various measurements of our fuel economy during some of the freeway as well as some of the city driving that we have done, and it's actually pretty good. Hyundai has figures that are well over 40 miles per gallon. We don't have the exact figures in front of us, but consider what the EPA has posted for Ioniq. Our tester is actually doing a pretty good job meeting those fuel economy requirements. Our hybrid does come with a 6-speed dual clutch automatic transmission, and as mentioned in our first video, our particular tester has a traditional gear shifter for this transmission. The electric, that will still get a push button style gear selector, but here in the hybrid and as well as the plug-in, you will get a traditional gear shift lever design for the dual clutch. The dual clutch does do a good job delivering smooth gear shifts. It is obviously tuned towards promoting higher fuel economy, so we have noticed occasions where it will like to try and race its way from the lowest gear all the way to the highest gear to try and sip maximum fuel economy. Of course, putting it in sport mode does cure this behavior somewhat, but this is not a transmission that you will find as say in the Veloster N. The Veloster N will be getting a dual clutch as part of its 2021 model year updates, and look for that particular model to cover your performance driving needs. But as far as being a green focused transmission, it certainly does a good job of that. It really lets this car sip fuel. And the Ioniq also does a fairly good job drowning out wind noise. You do get a little bit of tire roar penetrating the cabin, and you do get the occasional slap when you hear go over divots or bumps. But it's actually a very quiet cabin in here. The stereo sounds pretty good. Our tester is a limited, so that means you get the high-ranking Infinity Premium audio system. And when we've had this system on and listened to some tunes, it actually does a good job delivering good sound quality. We wish that the high notes wouldn't sound quite as tinny, but that's a minor thing. It's not going to be a Bang & Olufsen unit, but for what it is, it actually does a pretty good job. Now, back to the Ioniq sub-brand. How will it fare in the long haul? That's an interesting question. And a good way that we can look at this is look at how Genesis is doing. When Genesis first appeared on the scene, it was a very young brand. And it was also a very car-focused brand. You had the G80, which was formerly known as the Hyundai Genesis. You had the G90, and very recently, Genesis launched the G70. Now, there's going to be a crossover coming out called the GV80, and that one will certainly be the game changer for Genesis, because GV80 will allow that brand to access a higher percentage of customers, especially those that like having a utility offering versus a formal sedan. And we suspect that Ioniq will ultimately do the same thing. Hyundai teased 3 different models that will be coming initially, and which will join alongside the Ioniq car that we're in right now. And one of those is going to be a sedan. It looked very sporty. You couldn't see too much because Hyundai insisted on leaving that particular model, as well as the other 2 that it teased, in the shadows. But it looked pretty good. After that one, we're going to see a crossover. And then after that, we're going to see a bigger utility. Now, this is also going to be roughly in the same vein as the Prius family. Toyota expanded the Prius family a few years ago, and you had models such as the Prius C, the Prius V, as well as other deviations of the standard Prius, including Prius Prime. That particular model family has done kind of a mixed performance. The Prius C was never a hot seller. The Prius V, that unceremoniously got cut from production. But we will give Toyota credit for trying to expand the family and for doing such an experiment. As for Hyundai, we suspect that they're going to try and tailor Ioniq to be a very futuristic, technology-leaning brand, meaning you're going to see a lot more emphasis on infotainment technology. You're going to see a lot more emphasis on driving technology, self-driving, advanced forms of cruise control, as well as potential evolutions of the brand's current battery technology, including the electric motors, as well as the materials that the batteries are made out of themselves. Look for range and fuel economy to be 2 very big goals for the Ioniq brand. And we hope that pricing will also be within reach of many buyers. Typically, when you look at electric vehicles as a whole, you will see that many of them will have a bit of a price premium. You look at Tesla, you look at Lucid, you look at some of the other ones that are on the game, and you do tend to get a premium price. We're hoping that Ioniq will be able to give buyers more of a welcoming pricing ladder, and in turn be a more inviting brand for green focused buyers. The Ioniq brand will certainly need to do that, and when you look at some of the early promotional tools and the work that Hyundai has made into promoting Ioniq as a brand, we think they're off to a good start. There is still some room for improvement, but for now, they're off to a good start. But back to the present, and that covers the Ioniq car. Hyundai has promised that the Ioniq is going to be receiving some key updates for 2020 as well as 2021. A big one, if you're a fan of the Ioniq electric car, is that you're going to have a bigger battery selection. The old model got about, I want to say, a little over 120 miles of range. We took one out for a drive down to Ohio, and let's just say that range was something to be desired. Hyundai claims that the updated Ioniq Electric will deliver a revised driving range of roughly over 200 miles. It won't quite match the 238 mile range offered by the Kona EV. Hyundai claims that's partly because of some of the sacrifices that they had to make to accommodate the battery in the Ioniq, but it should still be a bit of an improvement. And in turn, that'll give you longer distance to go between charges. We also hope that the updates resolve the charge station finder that is in the infotainment system. When we were in our Ioniq Electric a few years ago, we noticed that in addition to traditional charging stations, the system was also finding Tesla superchargers. And that says something when you're trying to compete against Tesla, and yet you have a feature that is literally leading your customers to your biggest competitor. So that is certainly one item